when I get a text from somebody that says, hey, I'm back in town on Friday, can I start my meals on Saturday or Monday? Like, they're there, pick up ready.
Yeah.
So like, if you felt like you lost momentum, like, don't worry, Catalyzt has you.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. How we doing, Tony?
Morning, Bear.
Friday, feeling good. Saw you at the gym.
Yep.
Atta
Got
boy.
a little 50-minute in.
There you go. Good. We have a local guest today. Super excited about it. We have Cheryl Zonkowski in the studio, and I've worked with Cheryl for quite a while now. She's been dialing in my nutrition and diet, and it's been awesome. So we wanted to bring her on and share some insights and talk about the business she's running here in Virginia Beach, which is also goes to anyone in the United States. She offers the services. So let me just read the quick bio. Cheryl is a registered dietitian and performance nutrition expert with over 20 years of experience. She specialized in performance nutrition for Naval Special Warfare, which is how I got linked up with her originally through VHP. And then she is the founder of Catalyzt Nutrition, a private practice in Virginia Beach offering personalized nutrition counseling and meal prep. And I definitely want to get into that because I've been doing it for quite a while and it's been awesome for me. Catalyzt Nutrition focuses on optimizing mental and physical performance through tailored nutrition plans based on individual health metrics and one-on-one consultations. And I think that's the biggest call out for me is the custom, how you're able to customize it for every person in their specific needs and goals, and hitting a DEXA scan or a body scan. And I mean, it's very high level. So, a lot to get into. There's a lot more I can read on the bio, but we'll call out that you were the director of sports nutrition at University of Florida as well. Just very credentialed. I mean, this is what you've been doing for so long, and appreciate you coming into the studio. It's nice to have a local guest for a while.
I know,
These
right?
are so much better.
Yep.
Yeah. Not to discount our remote guests, but to be able to do it in person. So welcome, Cheryl.
Be able to sit down and join you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
It's not too bad. And we're trying to get the AC pumping over there. It's making up its mind so we don't get roasted out in here. But I guess, Cheryl, to start out, I guess I want to kind of get right into how you got linked up with Naval Special Warfare originally, because that's how I got, linked up with you through Virginia High Performance. You run all the meals for all the guys, and quick, synopsis on that. It's like basically a 6-week program where transitioning special operators or active duty guys can go do a 6-week kind of immersive pipeline where you're doing 2 workouts a day. Cheryl's delivering you all of your meals. So like you literally you eat exactly what she gives you based on a DEXA scan, which determines your macros based on body composition and your goals. You're getting massages, you're doing speech therapy, you're doing all these things, and you do it for 6 weeks. And it's just been awesome for guys. So, when I did the program, and I think I did the 6-week version, I was of course getting your meals, and it was unreal because you literally just show up every day, you grab a giant lunchbox, and it's just like, all right, eat this. And you can't screw it up. And it's specifically tailored to, where guys land after their DEXA scan and their body comp. And after you do the consult with, if they want to get lean, if they want to bulk, where they're at. And I just thought that was awesome. So of course I continued it, after I got out of that, because I was like, hey, can I just do this for myself? And I got to see great results. And I think having a professional get insight into your diet, it makes you realize like how wrong you've been doing a lot of things for so long that you just assume are right. Like I ate clean, I ate healthy, but the first thing for me that I realized is even though I thought I ate a ton, I wasn't getting enough calories, and particularly in the morning, I was not getting anywhere nearly enough carbs. I mean, you were giving me like a giant bowl of blueberries that it was massive. And I would do like a handful of blueberries or raspberries, eat some eggs and bacon and go to the gym. Mm-hmm. And I realized once I got your plan, it was a giant thing of oatmeal. It was a huge thing of blueberries and a bunch of scrambled eggs and guacamole and turkey bacon and all these things. I'm a 245 pound dude, so not everyone's going to, of course, get that breakfast. But that's what I needed. And even though we increased my calories, I don't know, by over probably 1,000, I actually leaned out. So you brought me from like, I think 12 and change % body fat, 245 pound dude, to I think the last one we did, DEXA, was like a 10.3 at 245 pounds. Like that's not a bad body comp. And I don't think I'd want to be below 10 because like I'm not trying to win any like fitness physique competitions. Like I think that's a healthy place to be. So it was cool for me to actually see it play out, but I was eating more. And particularly like, and we can get into this, and you would of course be able to speak to it better than me, is with women. I see women and you talk to them, it's like, oh, I haven't eaten all day. I just had a couple carrots and a piece of celery. And then, you know what I mean? It's 8 o'clock and they're eating their first meal and they think, oh, this is how I get skinny and lean. And it's like, no, you actually need to be doing the exact opposite of what you're doing. Your metabolism has gone to complete shit because your body doesn't know when its next food source is.
Yep.
And it's going into low battery mode. If this is your iPhone, you've been on low battery mode all day because you're not eating. And that's why you're not getting lean. You know what I mean? And so it's like, no, you should be eating all day long, snacking, you know, like pump up the calories. Don't worry, you know? So, you know, I know we have a lot of female listeners too. So I guess I went long on that, but just unpack how you got started with what you're doing and kind of, you know, what you've seen working with special operators, but also with athletes and civilians here in Virginia Beach. Absolutely.
Well, thank you for the testimonial for one. And I mean, you pretty much stole my thunder, so I don't know how much I have left to offer, but we'll go from there. I actually started at the University of Florida as a student with the hope of becoming a physician one day, and just through the network, had conversations with people and realized that there was a full-time position with the Florida Gator Athletic Association of a performance dietitian. At the time, she was one of only 3 in the entire country. It was a basically untapped field prior to that. So the growing relationship and understanding of the value of what you want your body to be able to do, optimizing your own genetic potential, whether it's through hobbies, activities, sports, your professional needs, that there's training for that through the food, fluids, supplements, et cetera, that you're ingesting, the timing of them, the combination of them, your consumption throughout the day. So I actually switched majors, met with this woman, got an audience with her, sat down, talked to her for about 45 minutes. And by the end of the talk, she was like, so what are you thinking? And I was like, I want to be you when I grow up. And as the odds would have it, I was her. She retired about 3 years later to just move to another location due to, you know, family reasons. And I got to take her position as the director at the University of Florida. And funny enough, with Naval Special Warfare, I refer to the network because I've always found that relationships with people, and it's true in the way that I meet new clients and counsel as well, is there's a tremendous amount of value in meeting someone, learning who they are, learning about them, meeting them where they are, because it's the most likely way that they will be successful when you are having an interaction to help them get to where they want to go. So I happen to have been a colleague with a gentleman who transitioned out of collegiate athletics to over here at Dam Neck. And he called me one day, oddly enough, during Florida Gator football 2-a-days. And he's like, I know that you're in the middle of it right now, but we have a position out on the West Coast to work with Naval Special Warfare. What do you think? And I said, give me a shot, put my resume, throw my hat in the ring. And I started out there. I was the first performance dietitian that they ever had co-located with Naval Special Warfare, not affiliated with a hospital or the clinical setting necessarily. I was out there for 3.5 years before the gentleman who actually recommended me transitioned on to another position, and I transferred here.
That's all. So you're West Coast originally.
Originally, yes.
Yeah. And that's awesome that like the military units, particularly the special operations community, has realized like you need to treat this like a pro sports team. It's the same idea. You know, it's high performance individuals. They're athletes. There's huge physical demands of the job. And some guys come in with an athletic pedigree where they were getting coached by that, and a lot of collegiate athletes and stuff that, like, you know, Tony is a collegiate athlete, you know, like you get that guidance and mentorship because they own you and they're going to make sure you're eating right and all these things. But you might get a guy who went in the military, he's 19 years old, was never like a good athlete in high school, has no background in it. And then he's thrown into a SEAL platoon and you're on the road 300 days out of the year and he's supposed to maintain performance nutrition, living out of a hotel room with a crock pot, you know what I mean? And with no idea what he should be eating. And he's probably just drinking Monsters and throwing dips in all day and not hydrate, you know what I mean? And that's why it's so good to have people like you to take a young buck like that and say, all right, let's hit the reset on this. Here's the basics of where you need to be. And then you guys providing the resources for them to actually, you know, get to where they need to be, which not everyone, you know, takes that advice. But I think as guys get more senior and more mature, they realize that you can't be running on Monster and dip all the time when you're running around all day doing stuff. So, all right. So you got to Naval Special Warfare. And I guess, what did you start to see as far as the deficiencies in nutrition? Was there stuff that stood out immediately where you just like pulling your hair out, like these guys need a lot of work, or Were they more squared away than you thought? And what do you think was the biggest impact as far as like what you were able to implement and get, through to guys?
It was an exciting opportunity for me for a number of different reasons. One was at Florida, I had stepped into somebody else's program, whereas with Naval Special Warfare, I was with a unit who had never had anyone before. So I got to build a program from scratch. And I love the opportunity of a clean slate. I mean, you already mentioned the community didn't know what it didn't know, and everyone's going to receive you differently. Some really well, some, we've always done it this way. Why do we need to change it? But it gave me kind of an open opportunity to go and out on training sites and assess exactly what was available. I did it probably for 2 or 3 months. Other than having casual conversations with people, I just observed. One of the most important things that I have found when joining new communities or becoming part of new environments, even if it's a new company, there's a microculture. And it's really important to understand the values within that microculture so that when new topics and new ideas are brought to that community's attention, you can make it fit within the pre-existing values of the organization, versus if you just come in hot swinging, you may not necessarily be able to reach as many people just because of the way that you present something may not work with their current structure.
Yeah. And with Catalyzt Nutrition, what ended up standing that up? And you obviously were doing it through a military unit, but you probably realized, hey, there's a civilian application to this here in Virginia Beach. And of course, now well beyond just Virginia Beach. Talk about how you stood that up and walk us through the business model.
Great. So for 20 and change years now, I hear from a lot of clients, when are you just going to feed me? When are you just going to feed me? And through the amazing opportunity with Virginia High Performance, we had a few caterers prior. I was blessed with the opportunity to have to choose between staying full-time with Naval Special Warfare and working with Virginia High Performance full-time. And that's when the private practice came into existence. And after going through the first caterer, the second caterer, between my experience at Florida, my experience within Naval Special Warfare and food service and logistics chain and the supply chain and all of those kinds of things, I basically knew enough to be dangerous when it came to food service operations. So I decided to give it a try. And one of the things that I would like to think Catalyzt is doing differently than some other entities is meeting the clients where they are and redefining exactly what performance means. So performance can mean 100th of a second in a pool or on the track. It can also mean a microsecond in target acquisition and calculating wind speeds, but it can also be, are you the best version of yourself when you're having to take a meeting at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday evening for business, or at 2:30 when you're sitting in the pickup line and being able to greet your kids as the best version of yourself after whatever kind of morning that you have, so that you are being on your best for them and your family and all of those things. It requires different sorts of fueling. And you'll probably hear me say fueling a lot during our conversation today, because there's all these sociocultural ties related to food and eating. And with technological advances and science, some developments have been incredible and amazing, but others, I think, have driven people away from the relationship and the understanding of listening to their bodies while they're eating and experiencing community and engaging with each other. And that's one of the things that Catalyzt is trying to bring back, is listening to your body with regard to food, eating whole foods that are from the earth, minimally impacted by the technological advances. So it's a food first model, because eating food first without tricking hunger and satiety cues or ignoring hunger and satiety cues is not necessarily the model that everybody's following in their heads right now.
Yeah, I love what you said there. Even as a credentialed individual, the fact that hey, there's a relationship here that needs to be established in order to maintain this over time, because you see so many individuals tricking their bodies through certain things, whether even something as simple as caffeine and other appetite suppressants, and they take the science in almost in a robotic way, just try to achieve an end state without worrying about the 30 other variables that are being affected by just achieving an end state. Now, if you're conscious of it and you realize, hey, I'm entering a bodybuilding show and I know I'm doing negative side effects to my body, but I'm trying to achieve this one singular thing, I can respect that. But I think some people disconnect from the human element of it and just become so almost overwhelmed by all of these different inputs that are, a lot of them are science-based, but it loses touch with actually the human element of it. So that's something you knew intuitively right when you started in the field, or did it develop over time as you kind of recognized that disconnect for some individuals?
So it has grown over time. So I myself was a soccer player growing up. Way back in the day, captain of my high school soccer team. But as a captain of a team of females, there was a lot of things that I was observing at an early age relative to performance and energy levels and ability to make it through the entire game versus being exhausted and not being able to perform at the highest level. The curriculum didn't necessarily teach a whole lot of intuitive eating. Those are some of the things that I pursued as continuing education after I was already a practitioner in the field, just because I found that it wasn't as easy to reach as many of my clients as I possibly could with just science. So there had to be another angle or another way to communicate with people as a whole that helps find their hook, like what is going to get their vested interest and buy-in and make them want to do the things that will help them become the best version of themselves.
Well, and how do you, we actually just had a neuroscientist on who is actually in a very typical scientific research way trying to study the science behind intuition. So it was a fascinating conversation, but one of the topics he actually brought up was his concern surrounding intuitive eating. And here, like, I grew up on a 200-acre farm. My parents were very when it came to food, like just very squared away at a young age. So those principles, like for somebody like me, I actually disagreed a little bit with what he said, because I do feel like I've always had a relationship with food where it's never went off the rails. It's never been something I've struggled with. And I give a lot of credit to my parents for that. But I also can see from his perspective with ultra processed foods, sugar and everything, that like for a lot of Americans to say that they should be intuitively eating could just lead to an absolutely destructive end state. So how do you wrestle and kind of meet your clients? And I'm sure it's something you have to identify in the beginning stages of working with them. Like, okay, do they have a good foundation to be able to really judge what intuitive eating is? Or are they already a little off the rails and their kind of compass for what intuitive eating would be is only going to lead them further astray?
And that's one of the beautiful things about coaching, is being able to communicate with your clients, being able to hear what they are saying and understand like where they are as a state of motivation for change. That is one of the reasons that we do sit down and we do a complete nutrition questionnaire with each and every client. And it's the merriment of the science with the holistic principles. I agree. Like, it's amazing that your parents had that kind of open-ended model with food and what they put in front of you and how you engaged as a family, and depending on what requirements, if any, were there when you were allowed to leave the table versus not allowed to leave the table. And not everybody necessarily had that relationship growing up, especially as the technology has advanced. So that is one of the reasons that with the kitchen, we do scientifically formulate how each client starts. And when I sit down with them, it may happen in the initial consult, it may happen in a casual conversation at a pickup, or it may happen in a more formal follow-up conversation, because all of that is part of the initial membership fee when you join our organization. But we are starting you out based on your metrics as far as whatever body composition assessment that you have access to. If you have blood work available to you through your healthcare provider or another third party, your personal and family medical history, and then obviously your desired outcomes and goals. So we attach the science to that and start you out with a certain number for that individual, number of meals per day, number of snacks per day. We coordinate that also knowing what their schedule is. So it's not a one size fits all model. It's completely custom. And then growing into that conversation of, we're going to start you here and let's have you start to pay attention. Like, does your body tell you that you are hungry? Does your body say like, hey, I'm pretty good right now, I don't need to eat these last couple of bites or finish the plate or whatever? And it can be individual specific, but even to tie in that military piece, some of the reason that military members make it to the level that they make it is because they can tell their body stop. Like, hey, I don't have time to listen to you right now. I'm not going to be able to eat. I'm not going to be able to drink. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm going to be able to continue to push forward. And then it's this whole mental construct of, okay, you have arrived. You don't have to be in that state of deficit constantly. Now let's get you performing optimally now that you have made it to this level in this unit. Will there be courses that you have to make those sacrifices again and pick and choose? 100%. But if you want to be the best version of yourself, the government and the community as a whole has invested a lot of time and education and money into making you as capable as you are and experienced as you are, and how able you are to stay in the community and be successful and maintain your cognition and memory and physical abilities and all those things depends on how well you take care of yourself from this point moving forward, being able to pick up your grandkids without back pain, kind of a thing. So, and that ties in to the general public as well. We may just do it differently. Especially as Americans, I find that we put, and back to that female piece, as providers, taking care of others first, our personal needs take a backseat. So like it becomes this hit list of what is the critical element right now? I need to go to the bank. I need to go to the grocery store. I need to pick up the kids. I need to take this meeting. I need to take this call. I need to go, oh, I only have 60 minutes for my workout. I have to go do that. And everything else takes a backseat. So it's not that those things necessarily need to become less important, but the educational piece of it can be practical to weave in taking care of yourself within your current schedule so that you can not only maintain the person that you are, but even optimize the person that you could become for yourself and everybody else around you.
And what are the principles that you, whether it's the 35-year-old mom with 3 kids who's running around like a crazy woman, or the 28-year-old Navy SEAL who truly is just looking for, I want to perform the best I possibly can. I would love to hear your like, what are the principles that apply to all of those? Meaning like, these are the base ones, whether you're looking for performance, weight loss, weight maintenance, because within each of those models, of course, there's going to be nuance to calories, carb intake, but regardless of where you're at on that spectrum, what are some foundational principles that you think every listener, every individual should apply to at least get a good baseline structuring? Yeah,
absolutely. One of the biggest ones is hydration. And a lot of people, when we're talking about nutrition and fueling, they forget. You can argue 70-ish% of the human body is comprised of water. But what people don't realize, especially when they come and sit down with me, the main complaints or feedback that I get when I say, how are you feeling, is I'm tired, I have brain fog, I'm easily irritated, and everything hurts. And those are the 4 first signs and symptoms of being dehydrated. And it's inconvenient to stay hydrated because then you have to go to the bathroom more frequently throughout the day. But a minimum place to start would be taking your body weight and getting half of that in ounces. And if you're nowhere near it, just adding maybe 1 16-ounce additional water bottle for 3 to 5 days, and then putting in a second additional, water bottle. But that would be a big one. I can't tell you how many, at least dozens, maybe even 100 clients who have said, I feel so much better just because I am now drinking enough water. So like, that's the biggest one.
Because there's probably a lot of people, they wake up, they drink a couple cups of coffee, they make the kids breakfast or whatever. Maybe they have a little breakfast, they go to work. They have meetings all morning, and then they get to lunchtime and they're like, oh, I got to eat lunch. And it's like, all right, what have you consumed? 2 cups of coffee and, like a glass of orange. Like that's a horrible recipe for success. Yeah. Right. And that's probably why they're exhausted by then and irritable. And so do you think just like, as just a practical application, like first thing you do in the morning, like throw some electrolytes in there and just down like 32 ounces of water? Like, is that a way to get you on the right path? That's what I try to start doing. Is usually I go right to the coffee, but now I'll hydrate first. And that's kind of like my buy-in. It's like, all right, I feed the dog, I go to the bathroom, and I have to drink my water. And then it's like, okay, now you can have coffee. Is that practical advice for people to get them on the right path? Do you think that will have a big impact by that lunchtime meeting where they're not, with a headache and exhausted already?
I think that is absolutely true.
Okay.
An average adult loses about 1 liter of fluid in gas exchange between your skin and the air around you while you're sleeping, even if your sheets are bone dry when you wake up.
Okay.
So that's the reason that you feel and sound the most like a Rice Krispie treat first thing in the morning, is because all of your joints and vertebrae are right on top of each other with no liquid fluidity for them to rotate about an axis. So yeah, smaller humans could probably get away with 20 ounces versus 32. But I always start with clients, I'm like, get up, eat, brush your teeth, 20 to 30 ounces of water, and then go on about your normal routine.
And how important is it to put like electrolytes in there? Because you have a salt.
So, yeah, Baja, just like typically, which is the one that has been shown to have the least amount of bullshit in it. Because there are some like Himalayan salts that like there was a big pop, but there was a lot of kind of, I wouldn't even call them bad actors, but like they were finding a lot of trace amounts of different stuff you would not want in your body. So Baja Gold is the one that I use.
So Tony got us hooked up. We have one of those hydrogen water systems in our break room. And then we have a little thing of salt that you put a little mini scoop in there. So every time, and it's pretty awesome. I mean, you know the science behind it, I think. But if someone just chugs 30 ounces of water with no electrolytes, does that diminish the impact greatly? Or like, let's say I eat one of your breakfasts. I think there's probably some salt in there that you add. Like I'm probably good in that case. But for someone that doesn't eat breakfast, is it pretty critical to be adding electrolytes with that first water for the body to actually absorb it?
So I will say, yes, it is beneficial if you're not eating anything to add a little bit of sodium to your water. But there's exceptions to every rule. So if you're still eating a lot of foods that are processed in sauces, highly seasoned, people have blood pressure concerns. So depending on individually where you fall, I would say for most humans, yes, it's a great idea to put a little bit of electrolytes in your morning water if you know that you're not going to eat anything for a little while. If you throw a little salt of some kind on your eggs and you always eat, eggs for breakfast or whatever, then by all means, you may be getting it somewhere else. So just be mindful of what you have going on in an underlined fashion. I know that we're trying to do like big picture recommendations, but at the same time, I got to throw those little caveats. Of
course. In there. Yeah. Well, you could probably get into here and like, I'm sure we could digress into this, but for me, the salt too, because I do salt my food. So I am careful. It's not like every liter of water I'm adding salt to it, but the mineral content for me is something like when you start to really like, there's a lot of evidence now to show that the mineral content in a lot of the foods we're eating has been depleted significantly compared to say 30 years ago. Which you could get into the different farming methods and the different kind of stuff or ways in which vegetables are being grown now. So the sodium, of course, is something like you said, be a little careful there, but there is a good salt will have a ton of micro minerals that are a lot of people are depleted in and can lead to a ton of significant or even subtle things that you chase your tail on only to realize you weren't getting enough minerals.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say the more changes that you make towards a clean, healthy, local, sustainable lifestyle when it comes to your food and fluid choices, the closer that you get to that, the more that you are going to need things like salt and other electrolytes because none of your foods are processed. So none of those things are added to them. So then it's just a learning curve of learning some additional things that you may need because now you've made some healthy and cleaner choices. And this is just what kind of comes along for the ride because it's not processed and added because of the industry anymore.
Yep. I would love like something both that I've wrestled with at times, and then I see a lot of individuals wrestling with that honestly are pretty squared away individuals, meaning like these are healthy individuals, a lot of which were former athletes, maybe some collegiate, some high school, that are within my immediate friend group, but then even just on like secondary or tertiary friends, is kind of food sensitivities. And I think here's one where I do think people can get tied up in knots with this, but I do see, and I'm sure the big ones, of course, are like the dairy, like everyone now, the gluten side of things, but like even foods that for one person could be extremely healthy. And here comes in like the whole carnivore argument is that like certain foods for certain individuals can have an inflammatory effect that somebody else doesn't have. So say, let's use a case scenario. And then of course you can broaden if you feel applicable is let's say you're 30 years old, work out 5 times a day, healthy, 80% whole food diet, but you're recognizing that whether it's gassiness or tiredness, like you feel something is funky in your gut. So let's not just use like, you're not just tired in general, you feel that there's something going on in your gut. How would you approach, like what would be your first approach to that? And then I would love for you to touch on kind of food sensitivity and where you fall on that spectrum, because I know there's a large variance in opinions when it comes to that subject.
So that's one where initially having some blood work can be helpful. Seeing if your immune system is overtaxed, if you're having any like kidney or liver related issues from a digestion and excretion standpoint. So sometimes it's not even necessarily that someone has an innate food sensitivity. It's just that if they're chronically, whether it's elevated cortisol or their immune system is, overworked, if they're having excretion related issues with kidney and liver, your body, because it's in that chronic state of high stress, is then susceptible to be sensitive to something. So it's almost like taking a step back and having it doesn't have to be the food sensitivities test. I mean, I think it's amazing that the technology is now out there that people can pursue additional information. but sometimes something as simple as just basic, like yearly or every other year blood work that you would get from a typical physician's office can be very educational in taking a look and saying like, okay, there's a lot of stress. Your body's doing a time and a half for some reason. So let's take a big picture look at things. And then, yes, we can absolutely dial in what some of the largest likely may be.
Culprits.
So like, for instance, when I was with Naval Special Warfare, we started executing a biomarker contract. So we were doing performance-based blood work on more of the community. One of the takeaway measures was that about half of the population had increased inflammatory markers for gluten, dairy, soy, and peanuts. So our kitchen currently doesn't produce anything with those things in them. It doesn't necessarily mean that people should never eat gluten, dairy, soy, or peanuts. It's just that a lot of times people are coming to us because there is something that they can't quite put their finger on. So we just help them eliminate some of those things. But even if you're on any program with ours, you could still have, ice cream at the end of the day, if that's something that we talk about, you know what I mean? So it's just something that we as a company are doing to help people if they are trying to figure out if there's something that's causing them some additional issues, helping them navigate their way.
When I love that you frame it that way, because there's where the intuitive sense comes in. Is I think anyone that's really attuned to their body will realize that, like, hey, 8 years ago, if you were in a really low stress mode and like your life was like very much in order and you weren't running around like a crazy person, you could eat different foods than when you're really high stressed. And there's where that attunement comes, is like, and there's where I think you avoid these like almost like a ideology where like, and you see that, go on YouTube and start to search around with different nutrition things. It's like you, in a 30-second search, you could have 3 credentialed individuals telling you literally the complete opposite thing. And are any of them wrong? I bet you would probably argue maybe to some degree, but what you realize is that there's where I think in each season of your life that your body responds to foods differently just based off your environment.
Yeah, and it's cool you're able to, I mean, you had the luxury of having all this data from so many individuals, right? So you're able to kind of take a large sample size and, okay, what are the broad takeaways for just the regular population here? And I love how, because that's a great place to start. Maybe you cut out dairy, see what happens. You cut out gluten, see what happens. And we've had a few girls here at the office that have done one of the food sensitivity things, and they got great results. They honed in. I think, Danny did like the elimination diet where you start like pulling certain things out, and, the results from what she says are just incredible. So maybe first step is just to maybe eliminate categories. And if for some reason you still are, not having a solution, maybe you go the extra step and say, okay, let's hone in on it even more specifically. Because ultimately I think like people need to realize like nutrition and sleep is like that is like 90% of your, like, your how you're going to feel and act. And, it's so critical. And I think, my big like takeaway from working with you is that like people should take agency and take control of like, their own lives. And, I think you, especially with the ladies, you had a good example. Like they're always doing for everyone else. And it's like, take this as an opportunity to check under the hood and get yourself right. And what you guys offer is so robust. And if I could just offer my 2 cents on how I think someone should start, that's kind of like, I don't really know what to do. I'm a busy mom or busy dad or whatever. And like my nutrition kind of sucks and I'm tired all the time. It's like, get with a professional. In this case, I highly recommend obviously working with you because I've done it. Get the blood work done, do a consult, look under the hood, talk about goals, do a body scan. Hopefully you can do a DEXA, which I think that's the one you'd recommend, right? That's the most accurate. I know there's some issues with some of the other ones, but if it's a little expensive, but it'll give you like the heat map printout of your body, and you can, talk about goals, and get on a plan. And I think the biggest thing for me, because I know you guys do online consulting. So if you're not in Virginia Beach or Hampton Roads, you still can absolutely benefit from this. But I think the biggest thing that people should know is, regardless of how dialed or savvy you are or knowledgeable in nutrition, because I consider myself someone that came in that was on the higher end of like, I was always a nerd about protein shakes and creatine. And in college, of course, we're getting taught all this. And then in the SEAL teams, like we had access to all this stuff. So I came to you as what I would consider maybe someone that's way more knowledgeable than the average Joe. But even when I did it, I learned so much right off the bat. I mean, for 15 years, I realized I was not eating enough carbs, like not even close. Right. And that was in the first breakfast you gave me. I was like, this is insane. Like I just ate like a pound of oatmeal and like 8,000 blueberries. And I went to the gym and my energy level was like way higher. I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to work out fueled. So even if you're that person where you think you know it all, or the person that has absolutely zero background, that's a great starting point, because you're gonna have those key takeaways right off the bat. And you know, I did your meals, I think, for about a year straight. And then I got off of just for a little while, just because, like, honestly, just to change it up a little bit. But I was able to take the learnings of being able to eating your meals for a year to kind of know how to fuel myself from that. And now I'm back doing them again because they're so awesome. But even if it's something that you do temporarily for as a purely educational thing to kind of learn, you know, what you're able to offer, and then you kind of go back to, you know, daily life. I think it's such a critical thing that people need to take control of. And with all the crap that's on the shelves out there and all the addictive stuff they put in the foods now, I just think this is a major, blind spot for people. And they can go 20 years and they don't even realize they're fueling themselves with absolute crap. And that's the reason for all these issues that end up becoming way bigger issues down the road. So, you know, for anyone listening, highly encourage it. And the other thing I'll add is for parents, this is incredibly applicable to your kids too. You know, you worked with my niece, Avery. She is now, because that was one thing I recognized, and I don't think my brother Mike would care me saying this, is like, you know, I wasn't sensing that she was super dialed on the nutritional side, you know, like 8th grade athlete, you know, now she's a sophomore in high school, like not really fueling. And she was a gymnast. They got 4-hour practices. They're absolute maniacs. They're in there from like 4 to 8:30 after school. Right. And then she's got like morning practice. She's doing softball. She's pole vaulting. She's doing all these other things. You could see how a freshman high school female athlete could not even be close to fueling themselves, you know, adequately. And then she got with you and you broke it down with her. And, you know, she, based on what she told me, learned a ton from it. Now she's going to be all-state athlete in probably 3 different sports this year as a sophomore. Awesome. Right. So when she has that 4-hour gymnastics thing, she now knows, okay, at the 2-hour mark, maybe I should drink one of these cherry juices or eat one of these perfect bars, or, you know what I mean? And as a high school athlete, most aren't there. You know what I mean? I was lucky that my 2 older brothers were great athletes. So by the time I got into high school and I was in sports, like I was drinking the protein shakes. But again, I was a little bit of a nerd in that way. There's so many athletes. So I think, you know, not only for people doing it for themselves, but for those that have kids, particularly that are young athletes, that is such a way for them to have a competitive advantage, because 99% of middle school and high school athletes are not anywhere near, you know, doing the right thing. And unfortunately, a lot of that, I think, is just home life. And, you know, their parents don't have the background, so they're going to eat Oreos and all the shit that their parents eat. So I just offer that up as just like, you know, I just think if there's one thing people can control, it's what they put in their bodies. And the way I see it is the controllable things is a way to be more resilient when adversity comes your way, right? Like if you have a balanced diet, you're working out and you're getting good sleep, when life throws you one of those, you know, major events, or maybe it's an ongoing stressor that you're dealing with, you will be in position to be as resilient as you can be in those moments. Whereas on the contrary, if you're getting 4 hours of sleep a night, you're eating like dog shit, you're not hydrating, you're doing all these other things, and then boom, you're hit with a divorce and a drawn out divorce trial, or whatever, your kid has some illness and you're in and out of the hospital for 2 years straight, whatever those things are that are just real life events, you're going to be on your ass because you're already compromised going into it. And that's a big reason why I got with you, you know, after the VHP, is because I was like, this is one thing I can control and I can perfect this. And the other things I can't control. You can't control what life's going to throw at you, but at least I will have a solid foundation so I can take those things on as best I can. So
I really appreciate that. And you touched on a couple of different things. So one, our goal, and mine as a practitioner and our goal as a company, is to train the trainer. Like, it's great when people want to continue to order meals from us. But we want to teach. We're one of those companies whose underlying goal is education. So our hope is that you do well, you thrive, you share this information with cousins, nieces, nephews, the guy down the street. So if you don't want to continue meals with us, we're thrilled that you have learned and you can go thrive on your own. And we're hoping that maybe you send us 1 or 2 people. Our goal is not this loop to keep every single client forever. It's to teach and to have them grow and share the word and things like that. So one, I appreciate the referral and the trust of seeing your niece. And the other thing, especially with kids and young adults, is that they are sponges. Like they are watching every single thing that their parents are doing, whether it's the daughter and the mom, the son and the father, and opposite. So if you want the best for your children, sometimes doing the right things for yourself is showing them what right looks like, versus if there are things that you are not sure of or things that you know that you could or should be doing better with regard to fueling and timing and what you're eating and the things that you're saying about yourself and your body and the presence of your children is indirectly rubbing off on them one way or another. And the other thing that is current nowadays that wasn't necessarily when we were growing up is social media. You know, you've talked about the information. You can listen to 3 different people and it's different. And now they're following people that they either like how they look or like what they say or like what they're doing and they want to be like them. And they oftentimes assume that the information coming out of their mouths is accurate. And that's unfortunately not necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's fascinating with, I mean, I have 3 little ones. Bear has 1 as well. And we talked with Sal DiStefano from Mind Pump Media, who he has 4 children as well. And just kind of talking through it, it's a interesting balance. And I think culturally with children, we don't do a good enough job of, first off, what you said, being kind of the representation of like, hey, give them a good mirror to see so that they can embody that as they get older, or just realize how much of an influence you're having on them. But then there is too, like, there's that relationship that we talked about earlier of like, it also doesn't work to be the dictator. And that's like, I naturally lean towards that because I hold nutrition in such high regard. Like what you put into your body, when you really recognize the influence it's having on your relationships, the way you think, the way you show up, as you said, that's your business model, is to make people the best or give them the opportunity to be the best version of themselves. Is that once you have children, I found myself having to check myself a little bit with like a 2-year-old. It's like, are we ever going to have Skittles that I'm going to be giving them? No, but like there should be some leniency too. If they're with their grandparents and they want to get ice cream, like stuff like that, it's like have some leniency, because there can definitely be, and I'm sure you've seen this in your clients, there can be ramifications to becoming so obsessive over diet nutrition that you actually start to negate the benefits of what you're doing through the nutrition itself. Is that something, I mean, that leads back to the relationship with food, I'm sure, is just
100%. Like no food. And I say that very loosely because nowadays humans can manufacture things. We're not going to get into the what is food and what isn't food conversation necessarily, but no food is innately good and no food is innately bad. And those those simple constructs are things that people have applied to food that isn't a food related characteristics. It's something that we have predisposed onto it. I say this in some of my talks, and I'm like, I feel like calories got a bad rap. All that calorie means is piece of energy. So like why?
There's a measurement of energy, literally.
So like if you're going to eat, if you know that dinner's in 20 minutes and you want to eat something because it's only 100 pieces of energy because dinner is coming up, then knock yourself out, eat that 100, whatever. But if you have a sleeve of trail mix that's 500 calories, people are like, and it's like, well, but you're not going to eat for 4 more hours. Like you should absolutely eat those 400 pieces of energy to get you cognitively, physically, emotionally through the next 4 hours, be engaging and be able to tune your focus in and out until the next opportunity you have to fuel yourself. So yeah, there's all these human imposed adjectives onto objects and food in particular. And it's just like nothing is innately good. Nothing is innately bad.
I know when I asked the question kind of surrounding like foundational principles, you landed on the hydration one, but are there any when it comes to food that you would say it's like, okay, for the average person that this is not a conversation that they have with anyone in their network. They've never consulted with a professional, just surrounding nutrition itself, whether it's protein intake or something like that. What would be a couple, and it could be one or a couple of things that you would say, similar to the hydration one, this can have an immediate effect on how you feel and perform? Just some simple, very simple strategies.
Sure. The first one would be shopping the perimeter of the grocery store. If you can pick something up and identify it with your eyes, because you're looking at the item itself without having to read any of the advertising, like this is a crown of broccoli, this is a chicken breast, that ideally should make up 70 to 80% of what you are consuming, would be a goal to achieve. One of the other ones would be, can you start to internally assess if and when your body is telling you that it's hungry, and starting to listen to those cues. Whether it's 11 in the morning or 2 in the afternoon, but starting to just reacclimate to what your body is asking for is going to be another one. As far as your plate, like when you are building a plate, protein is a huge topic of conversation. There are some researchers who are doing an excellent job, especially with regard to aging and making sure that you're continuing to maintain nearly the same amount of protein intake, just because our taste buds become less sensitive to it. And we want to maintain metabolically active tissue so we can stay independently living. Even more so on the female side of the house when it comes to perimenopause, menopause, and post and bone mineral density, but making sure that there's something representative of the protein. I mean, typically something that is an animal or is from an animal, at least being the size of your palm, if not the size of your hand, whether it's flattened or in a fist. At least a palm or, again, a fist of carbohydrates. And when I say carbohydrates, I'm referring to the starchier, so your breads, your rices, your pastas, your potatoes. And then about a third to a half of your plate should be something fibrous. So whether that's fruit that you consume the peel of, vegetables, but that's a great just visual way to start if you're nowhere near that right now. And the percentages can translate if all of your foods are in bowls. It doesn't necessarily have to be a flat plate.
And where do you land on timing? And I'm sure here, like, of course, based off what your goal you're trying to achieve, whether performance, weight loss, that's going to influence timing. But I will anecdotally say, like, for myself, something I recognize is like cutting off eating at 6 p.m. had tremendous benefits to my sleep. Now, as a skinnier guy, I would love to eat until 10 p.m. so that I can shove in some extra calories. But as I've gotten a little older and prioritized sleep, just recognizing how much that influences how I'm able to show up the next day, I realized that timing had a big difference on, and that's through trackable devices, Aura, that you can actually see. It's not, some of it's subjective, but then you can have objective measures as well. So for the everyday person, or if there is variance that you want to touch on between, say, somebody looking to gain weight, lose weight, maintain, what would you say on timing, meals a day? What is kind of the baseline there?
And if you want, I can give mine since I'm a client, and then you can go from there since like a practical. So we got breakfast at 6:30. It's massive. I already talked about it. And it's usually got guacamole with it.
Quick note on that, though.
Yeah.
We are front loading your calories, and that may be true for a lot of people. Putting the fuel in when you are the most active versus the majority of us like to backload.
Gotcha.
We like to be busy all day and then eat at the end. So I'm just explaining the reason that your breakfast looks the way that it does is because of that.
And again, that was one of my biggest learnings, because at first it was like, man, this is a lot of work. Like I gotta commit to this. Like I want to eat half of this and go to the gym. But when I started going to the gym with that in me, I felt completely different, completely different. And I noticed it towards the tail end of the workout when usually I'd be starting to fizzle out because I don't have any fuel, but that would sustain me. So that big breakfast, post-workout, I drink the cherry juice in a perfect bar around 9 o'clock. Lunch at noon, which is usually a lot of times it's like a huge salad with all kinds of awesome stuff in it. And then you like quinoa and other things like that. And then like a fat dressing, right? That's where we're getting my fats from. Yep. And then snack at 3:30, one of the fancy yogurts with usually like granola and pistachios like mixed in. Dinner at 6, which is always awesome. It has the same balance that you've already talked about, so I don't have to think about it. And then the best part of the day is the collagen chocolate pudding that I usually eat at like 8 or 8:30. That's my day. I don't know if you know how many calories I'm on. I think we bumped it down a little bit, a smidge.
You might be at 34 right now.
Okay. But that's obviously, I'm telling you, hey, I'm working out 5 days a week. I'm 240-pound dude. I'm a gym rat. I still want to be an athlete, even though I'm not anymore. So you're obviously fueling me with that context in mind. But that's just, one example, but, back to Tony's question, like how do people typically space that out? What do you recommend? Is what I'm doing pretty standard, but obviously just the quantities and calorie amounts are probably quite different.
Yes. So one of the points that both of you have brought up in this conversation is the value of sleep. Real quick, in a general capacity, I want to address that. So when I meet with clients, I definitely talk to them about if you being firing on all cylinders, 100% of your genetic potential, looking like an Adonis in the mirror, happy with what you see. If that's 100% of the pie, sleep is about 60% towards achieving that.
Wow.
Nutrition is about 30, strength conditioning is about 10. And can we go 25, 15 nutrition, strength conditioning? Sure. And are there some like slivers of other contributing factors? 100%. We're simplifying. But sleep is by far the elephant in the room. And I, for decades at this point, have had hundreds of clients say, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And my answer nowadays, learning what I've learned, is, well, you'll be dead a whole heck of a lot sooner if you're not sleeping. So if we take that and we rewind it a little bit, falling asleep and staying asleep, I would recommend at minimum an hour and a half to 2 hours between the last thing that has calories in it hitting your lips and when your head physically hits the pillow. And the reason for that is anytime you ingest something with calories, whether it's solid, liquid, gel, syrup, whatever, it has to be changed into its components. And the changing of food into whatever, energy, protein building blocks, if it's a fat source like hormone precursors, etc., it results in your GI tract giving off heat. It's called the thermic effect of food. But for you to hit your REM and deeper phases of sleep, your core temperature has to go down.
Gotcha.
So if you're finishing your pint of ice cream or you're finishing your glass of wine right before your head hits the pillow, your sleep is going to be restless for much longer into your sleep cycle. And you're going to be missing out on optimal anabolic, like hormone, helping your muscles, helping your memory solidify, like all of those things gets postponed because that food is moving through you, and it's moving through you slower because you are now in a horizontal position. So like that's one of the reasons that they say like go for a walk around the block after dinner because it helps things move along.
So yeah, it's a 90-minute no-fly zone of anything basically before you go to bed. Okay,
sure.
and that's practical. We all are. I mean, the ice cream, the wine, sometimes my pudding. It's like, oh, I got to eat my pudding. It's 10 o'clock, and I just go right upstairs, brush my teeth, and crash them. And that was last night. So this is good. I'm still learning, and that's good to know because my sleep last night, like my REM wasn't great. And maybe that's why, because I ate 50 grams of collagen protein and then went straight to sleep. So
and it's worth testing. Like not everybody's the same as me, but like 6 p.m. is the sweet spot for me. So like cutting it off there, and that of course does condense your eating window. But for me, noticeable difference in sleep when I cut it off there. And your body gets used to it. Like the first month of it, by 9, I mean, I go to bed typically 9:30 though. So, but by 9 I would be a little hungry, but you get used to it.
Yeah,
you start eating more kind of at that 5 p.m., 6 p.m. mark. But yeah, that was a significant one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway. Because I mean, I'd say 95% of people are probably not doing that.
Well, then you get into, like you said, the alcohol side of things. It's like, I'm certainly not against alcohol, but when you look at not only just putting calories in yourself, but then what that does on other mechanisms of your sleep.
And it pit stops at your liver for processing. So it takes longer to digest than food.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just, not to get us off topic too much, but with the sleep thing, like developing a good sleep hygiene, like protocol is so huge. And again, being in the teams, that was something you guys taught us that like most people don't have exposure to. Cause for us, it was so critical because our shit was so jacked up already with our schedule that it was like, all right, you guys need to learn in little things like, having the glasses that block the light from your phone, right? I have those in my glasses and I know you're a big nerd. You wear them here and, just getting off electronics and winding down and, the temperature of your room, and not having like little, alarm clock. That's this giant bright light that you don't think is a big deal, but is actually messing with your REM. So I ended up getting one of those 8 sleep devices. I don't know if you have one or if you
I do not have one, but I'm familiar.
Your brother turned me onto it.
He's a salesman for
that. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he should get a freaking commission because that thing was like $5,000.
I know.
But you put it over your mattress and it has a bunch of built-in sensors. But it chills the mattress, and then it adjusts the temperature throughout the night based on the sleep cycle you're in. So it can detect like when you're in REM, and it'll like lower the temp to keep you in it longer. And then it gives you a readout in the morning, and then you get like a sleep score. And it's unreal because obviously a lot of people end up running really hot at night, and then I think that disrupts your sleep, and then you get out of that cycle, and so. I think without going deep on this, you've already made the point. If 60% of that ideal human is sleep, I mean, so many of us are deficient in that. And I think a lot of it is just a lack of discipline. Let's say you put the kid down, it's 8:30 now, you've had a long day. You want to go have a glass of wine, some ice cream, and watch some Netflix for 2 hours. Okay, well, now it's 10:45. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you're getting up at 6. You have stuff in your system that is already going to make your sleep worse. You're not going to get 8 hours now, but you needed that 2 hours of Netflix to really unwind. It's like, okay, well, you did maybe, but now you're compromised going into the next day where you have meetings for 8 hours straight. And, then something stressful happens and you're more irritable, and, and then you don't eat good because you're in meetings all day. Like, you could see how these things start to compound. So I do think people should take that agency of their sleep routine as well. And it does take discipline, because it is nice to watch Netflix and have, no one bothering you, especially for the parents out there can all relate. Once you finally get the kid or kids down, it's like, oh my God, this is like, I can chill. I've been going all day from 6 a.m. and now I finally have some me time. But in some cases, hey, just going to bed might be the better solution there. So you can actually repair your body and mind and come out swinging the next day in a better position. So I'm glad you called that out, because obviously I know we're going into nutrition, but I know you always emphasize that, when you bring in a client and go through the kind of the full spectrum of wellness. It's absolutely worth calling out.
Yeah. And I think there too, it's, and I can tell just from our hour together, is like, it's not about strict rules. I think, like, regarding the sleep thing and then nutrition as well, it's like, build a relationship so that if nothing else, you're being conscious in your decisions. So
Right.
like, build the relationship to see how you feel when you eat a little healthier, when you sleep more. So then if you want to go have 4 beers with your friends, it's like, you're doing it from a conscious aspect of like, I know what I'm doing to myself. And then even there, you get into the nuance of like, you start to adjust the way you work out the next day, because I call it the burnt toast athlete, where like I'm sure you've seen it within the community, is like they're always redlining all the time, and they've gotten used to and almost addicted to that state. And then there end up being a ton of ramifications downstream when you just are redlining your body constantly. So yeah, I think with the sleep nutrition, like, I like that about your message, is like, hey, let's build a relationship, test some things. And then this isn't about creating a strict ideology around what you should or shouldn't be doing. But then at least you've felt better, you felt worse. And then there's the agency to, hey, you make the decision then within there. That's the free will component of it.
And one of the other things that I work on with my clients is bad math and have the memory of a goldfish from Ted Lasso.
Yep.
People like to do because I, whatever, worked out, did this, did that, I can therefore insert whatever here.
The little treat.
Typically, that ends up being bad math. So if you're going, like you said, you're going to go out and have 4 beers or however many with your buddies, go do it, enjoy it, be present. Don't skip breakfast the next day because you had 4 beers the night before. Like, have the memory of the goldfish. Your metabolism is going to cover down for you. Don't worry about it. And go back to your healthier, balanced, fueling concept the next day. So if you skip breakfast, you're just putting yourself in a deficit, and you're going to be irritable, brain fog, aches and pains, and tired by lunch. So just live in the present, do the thing, and then go back to fueling yourself the next day, morning, next meal, etc.
Yeah, that's great advice, because I mean, we all in this room know this, is that like, momentum's a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
And like, if you are too hard on yourself, that momentum will do a 180, and then you get a month later and you're like, oh my God, I was doing so good.
What happened?
I had one thing. And yeah, it's almost like you're like self-flagellating yourself for like one little mistake you made. You end up then off the rails for a month. And I think it's important to do that at times, because you're understanding the power of both your mind and your habit. But like you said, I love I'll remember the goldfish analogy, because that's a great way. Yeah. Forget about it. Get back on the train, because it's the drinking is a fascinating one with that. How it can, there's a subtlety to drinking that can derail you really quick from both your workout routine and nutrition, where you drink a Friday and a Saturday, and then all of a sudden that next week, if you're self-reflective, you're like, what the hell happened?
Oh,
like,
that'll lead into 3 or 4 days of your workouts.
Yeah.
And I think that's why momentum in all of these things we're talking about is so important. If you're on the road for work and, let's say you take 4 or 5 days off from the gym, when you come back, it's harder to go to the gym that first day back, right? For whatever reason. I've been to gym rats since I was in 7th grade. Even for me, that Monday rolls and I'm like, damn, I got to get in there. And you almost feel like you've forgotten how to work out, and you're like, oh, this place is weird. I feel like I don't belong here. Right. But hey, if you're at the hotel gym and you go down there and do a 20-minute workout of air squats, sit-ups and push-ups, low barrier to entry, chill. You don't need to kill yourself. That's enough to keep momentum going. Same thing with the nutrition, same thing with the sleep. Because I think some people get to the point where it's like 10 days and it's been crap and they're just like, screw it. Well,
Yeah.
I had a great nutrition routine, but it's so, I think for people listening, I think it's almost like a mind hack, you know what I mean? That hotel workout, it's like, you didn't actually get a lot out of that, but the fact that you went down there and got it in, and I have to do that sometimes, when we go to One Life, I'll go in there knowing, okay, I'm not giving it a 10 today. I'm going to give it a 4. Just to psychologically say, hey, at least I showed up. And a lot of times that 4 ends up turning into an 8 because then I start feeling good. And then I get a song that comes on. I'm like, screw it. Let's freaking get after it.
Go.
And then you walk out of there like, man, I felt way better than I thought, even though I got bad sleep or whatever else. So, I think with all things, carrying that forward momentum, even if it's just a little momentum, is enough to keep the ball rolling. So you don't have to kind of do a hard reset and start from scratch every time. And, that's why you stack little wins turn into big wins. So,
and that's one of the reasons that Catalyzt came into existence with the travel schedule of clients. Like once you're a member, your membership is a one-time fee. You're a member for life, regardless of whether we increase your plan, decrease your plan, change your macros. We do all of those things. It's all inclusive with your membership fee. But to your point, when I get a text from somebody that says, hey, I'm back in town on Friday, can I start my meals on Saturday or Monday? Like they're there, pick up ready.
Yeah.
So like if you felt like you lost momentum, like don't worry, Catalyzt has you, So like we're there to fill those gaps when you're going to get back and you're like, my refrigerator is empty. I'm going to order from insert app here for the next 4 days because I didn't go to the grocery store, but I got to go right back to work and go right back to school pickups and like do all those things. So again, we love to train the trainer and have people like graduate and move on, but we are also there to catch you when you need a little help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I know there's something you wanted to announce. Do you want to?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What do you got?
So, well, one, you've alluded to it. We do make a signature protein collagen pudding. If you are in the area, they sell it at a couple of the local gyms and
Highly
coffee
recommend.
shops. That is one product that we do make that does contain organic whole milk dairy. So I will put that out there.
Okay.
But all of our food is gluten, dairy, soy, and peanut free. But our big announcement is we are growing, and you are going to see some mobile Catalyzt food trucks come this summer.
Okay.
So we're going to take our products to the streets, and you're going to see the protein collagen pudding. We're going to do some other signature products that will be initially cold out of the trucks. And we're going to change a little bit of our model to offer, and this is from feedback from our current clients, those trucks, you're going to be able to walk up and be like, hey, can I have dinner for 2? Hey, can I have dinner for a family of 4? And everything will be based on our model. And feel free to, take a look at us online or on Instagram and see what our food looks like and, what the anticipation will be. But we're gonna demo some of the client feedback in our food truck so that we can be physically present, not just on our little Alaskan Road location, but in other places, the community, music festivals, race finishes, big events, things like that.
I would be so stoked if I were at a festival or like a concert and I saw.
Well, how different is that?
Well,
right?
hey, and it's good.
You're not going
make
to
America healthy again. This is good timing for you.
Yeah.
You could lean into that.
You're not going to get chicken wings or what like you'd be like, for the dorks like us, be like, oh, let's get a healthy grass-fed meal
plus the 9 beers. But meal.
I'm still drinking 8 beers in the lawn.
We're helping. Catalyzt is helping.
The shirt's coming off, but I'll go get a healthy meal during that.
Yep.
And on the Alaskan location, are you guys open over the weekend?
So come this summer, we're going to be opening on Saturdays.
Okay. Right now Monday through Friday?
Yeah, Monday through Friday, noon to 3
Cool.
Is when we do signature salads and build your own salads and the grab and go section. So we have the perfect bars, the cherry juices, the custom puddings.
Perfect. And the only other thing we didn't hit that I would just want to kind of plug for you is that you helped me tremendously with the supplementation as well. And that was based on blood work. You're able to look at it. And then, for me, specific to me being an NSW, you kind of know like things we're exposed to and sleeps like. So I do, because I think that is significant. Obviously, you want your nutrition to be the foundation and you don't want to use supplements as a crutch. But assuming that foundation is in place, you've been able to get me on a supplement stack that's pretty sophisticated based on my own personal needs. It's based on regular blood work, every 3, 4, 5 months. That's very robust. I think they draw like 20 vials of blood. Now, not everyone doesn't have to do that. I just like to nerd out a little bit and know what's going on. And then you're able to look at it and say, yep, let's add this. Let's take this away. You don't need this adrenal cortex anymore. Your cortisol is good. All these things we're fine tuning. And I think that's massive. And I think that's kind of like get the nutrition in place first, but that's a great way to kind of get things to the next level. So I want to make sure that we include that is something that you guys do and are very good at.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I use all the thorn stuff. I know that's typically what you recommend. I know, Tony, you're a thorn dork too. All their stuff's really clean, and we have no affiliation with them. So I'm not trying to give them a free plug. It's just, it's good stuff. And, so takeaways, people that are not in Virginia Beach, they can go to catalystnutrition.com.
Mm-hmm.
They can get, subscribe to the service. You can get them a solid foundation of knowledge. And again, regardless of how dialed you think you are, because I thought I was that guy, there's a lot you probably don't know. So even if it's something to just, to reset your baseline of what you think, you need, I highly recommend it. Take that agency, take control. This is one of the components of something that is so important. But I'll let you close it out with anything else. Do we miss anything?
No, I appreciate you hosting. Thanks so much. Come see us. Come check out Catalyzt.
Tony, you got anything?
No. Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.